It is incredibly late. Or I guess maybe it's incredibly early, depending on how you choose to look at the clock.
Yeah, sure.
You're probably lying there right now, staring up at the ceiling, the glow of a screen just slowly fading in the dark room around you.
Just totally quiet.
Exactly. The house is completely quiet. The streets outside are dead silent. But if you are anything like us right now, your mind is absolutely racing.
How completely?
You cannot sleep. We can't sleep either. So it's just the three of us tonight. We're going to sit here in the quiet, and we're going to try to make sense of a story that just unfolded in front of the entire world. A story that, honestly, it feels like it breaks the very laws of physics and tactics and logic.
Yeah, there's this lingering static electricity in the air.
That's a good way to put it.
Because when you witness an event of that magnitude, something that structurally should not be able to happen on a football pitch, but does anyway, it leaves this distinct atmospheric charge behind. You have to talk your way through the mechanics of it just to ground yourself again.
Which is exactly why we are here. So today, we're taking a deep dive into our sources. And tonight, those include real-time match data, some historical archives, post-game tactical breakdowns, and, our own extensive notes from the past few hours.
Lots of notes.
Right. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack a World Cup semifinal that defied all rational analysis. We're going to explore the heavy ghosts of a 60-year international rivalry and look ahead to a final that feels almost mythical in its implications.
Mythical is the right word, yeah.
I want to take you, the listener, right back to the scene of the crime. Atlanta. The suffocating humidity, the deafening noise, the sheer crushing physical pressure of a World Cup semifinal. We're looking at the stadium clock, and 90 minutes are completely gone. 90 minutes of absolute grueling, breathless, tactically rigid football, and England is winning, 1-0.
And, it was a lead built on an incredibly clinical transition moment,
Right, the Anthony Gordon goal.
Exactly. Anthony Gordon exploiting this, microfracture in the defensive line.
He puts them ahead, and you can physically feel the collective holding of breath across an entire nation. They are 4 minutes, 4 agonizing, beautiful stoppage time, minutes away from a World Cup final.
So close.
The English fans in the stands are weeping, they're celebrating, they're singing. You look at their faces on the broadcast, and they already have one foot on the plane to the final. It's a finished story. Because the tactical execution by England up to that precise second had been, a masterclass in containment.
It really was. If you look at the defensive shape in our tactical sources, England had dropped into a virtually impenetrable 5-4-1 low block.
Just a wall.
A total wall. They were denying all space between the lines. They were forcing the ball out wide. The defensive lines were holding with perfect discipline. The game was mathematically and tactically over.
And then the building simply falls down.
Yeah.
There's no other way to frame it.
Yeah.
The final score, sitting there glaring at us in the dark right now, is 2-1. Argentina.
It's a state of sheer unadulterated disbelief.
I keep looking at the sequence of events, trying to force the numbers to make sense.
Well, it was the complete architectural collapse of a sporting dream.
Yeah.
But what we need to analyze is the how,
Right. How does that actually happen?
Because it wasn't just a sudden, chaotic scramble. We are talking about 2 precise, devastating strikes in the final moments of the match that required a surgical dismantling of an English defense that had been flawless for an hour and a half.
Flawless. And both of those surgical strikes are orchestrated by the exact same man, Lionel Messi.
Of course.
We need to dissect this because here is where it gets really interesting to me. At his age, in this specific tournament, watching Messi play it's like watching a phantom.
A phantom.
Yeah, he is a ghost haunting the center circle. You honestly do not see him for 80 minutes. He literally walks.
Just wander.
He wanders around the pitch. He stares at the grass. He looks at the opposing center backs. He watches the rotation of the midfield. He's basically just a rumor out there.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching the broadcast thinking is he injured? Is he even involved tonight?
Right, yeah.
And then out of absolutely nowhere, the geometry of the pitch shifts. He simply decides that losing the match is no longer allowed.
Framing him as a rumor is an excellent starting point, honestly, because it touches on the biomechanics of his current playing style.
How so?
Well, while every other player on the pitch is running themselves into the ground, burning up vital oxygen and accumulating lactic acid in their legs, he is conducting a relentless visual scan.
Just collecting data.
Exactly. He is mapping the shifting spatial relationships between the English defenders. He is calculating distances. And then, in the span of roughly 15 minutes, He weaponizes that data to completely dismantle England's reality.
It's mind-blowing.
He drifts into a pocket of space that didn't exist 3 seconds prior,
Ah.
delivers an impossible assist to Enzo Fernandez in the 85th minute to rip away the lead.
That pass was insane.
And then just when everyone assumes we are dragging our exhausted bodies into extra time, he processes the map again. Stoppage time, minute 91. A perfectly weighted, trajectory-defying ball, and Lautaro Martinez heads in the winner.
2 assists in the blink of an eye. The walking rumor becomes the only reality that actually dictates the outcome.
But if we pull back from the immediate shock of Atlanta, we have to recognize a broader narrative from our sources. This was not a sudden freak miracle.
You don't think so?
No. What happened tonight is part of a terrifying, almost mathematical pattern that has defined their entire month.
A pattern? You mean like this specific late-game execution?
Yeah. Our match data sources highlight a statistic that genuinely defies modern football logic. Going into this semifinal match, Argentina had scored 9 goals after the 75th minute in this World Cup tournament alone. 9.
Wow. And now, with the strikes from Enzo and Lautaro tonight, that number is 11.
11.
11 goals scored when the game is practically over, when the physiological output of the opponent is completely drained.
Let's look at the brutal road they took just to arrive in Atlanta. I mean, they were dragged into the deep waters of extra time by Cape Verde, a team that played a deeply frustrating, incredibly disciplined low block. They were dragged into extra time by Switzerland, surviving a barrage of hyper-efficient counterattacks.
That was a rough game.
And they had to claw back a massive, exhausting comeback against Egypt, matching them blow for blow in an intensely physical, bruising encounter. They have been living on the absolute precipice of elimination, flirting with disaster for weeks.
I have to jump in here, though, and challenge the dominant narrative we are seeing on the networks.
Okay, what's the challenge?
You hear pundits calling it luck. They talk about the luck of the draw or getting a fortunate bounce at the end of a match. But let's be real. You do not accidentally score 11 goals in the dying minutes of a World Cup.
No, definitely not.
It requires a specific mechanism. Think of it this way. It's like they were a deep-sea creature.
A deep-sea creature. Walk me through the mechanics of that comparison. How does that apply to a tactical football environment?
Okay, think about the bizarre, luminous fish that live at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. The immense, crushing pressure down there. The kind of physical and atmospheric pressure that would instantly implode a normal surface-level organism. That pressure is exactly where this Argentina team breathes easiest.
Oh, I see what you mean.
The first 80 minutes of a football match are just a formality, a warm-up, and a acclimatization period. They're just waiting for the psychological pressure of the impending final whistle to build to a point where everyone else on the pitch is suffocating from the stress.
And in that exact environment, they thrive.
Exactly. Discomfort isn't a hurdle for them, you know? Discomfort is their natural habitat.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the psychological phenomenon we are seeing in the data, because it speaks to the physiological response to stress.
Right.
Have you ever met someone, maybe a software developer or a writer or an architect, who only ever does their most brilliant, flawless work when the final deadline is 5 minutes away?
Oh, yeah. We all know that person. The student who stares at a completely blank screen for 3 weeks, ignoring every incremental deadline, and then sits down to write an absolute masterpiece at 3:00 a.m. the night before the final thesis is due.
Exactly. For the vast majority of human beings, that ticking clock is paralyzing. It induces a massive cortisol spike. Panic sets in, cognitive function narrows, and the quality of the work severely degrades.
You just freeze up.
But for a very specific, rare type of mind, that panic is the necessary fuel for hyperfocus. The adrenaline clears the noise.
Wow.
When an entire collective of 26 players and a coaching staff operates on that specific psychological wavelength, when they stare death in the face and escape it consistently, match after grueling match, it stops being a statistical anomaly.
It stops being luck.
Right. It becomes their core identity. They know, at a cellular level, that they are not dead until the referee blows the final whistle.
But the opponent knows it too. The opponent feels that looming inevitability. Which brings me to the other side of this tragedy. We need to slow down our pacing for a second and really analyze England.
Yes, we do.
Because framing this purely as an Argentine miracle or a testament to Messi's genius is, honestly, a massive disservice to the English side.
It fundamentally ignores the reality of the match. Because for the vast majority of those 90 minutes, England was objectively and tactically the superior football team.
They absolutely were.
Yeah.
They were structurally flawless. They were dangers in transition. They were disciplined in their spacing. And you have to look at the sheer physical and emotional toll they paid just to earn the right to step onto that grass in Atlanta today.
The sources map out an agonizing tournament path for England.
So brutal.
From a tactical standpoint, they've heavily relied on Harry Kane dropping deep into the number 10 space to orchestrate play, and Jude Bellingham making relentless, lung-busting late runs into the box to provide the offensive output. Every single analyst in the world knows that is their primary mechanism, which means every single opposing manager has spent the entire tournament targeting them, putting bodies on them, and physically wearing them down.
And it isn't just the tactical targeting, right? It's the environmental brutality of their schedule.
Yeah.
To fully understand England's physical state in the 85th minute tonight, we have to look at where they were last week.
Mexico City.
Yes. They had to play a brutal, grueling knockout game in the altitude and heat of Mexico City. We're talking about playing high-intensity football at over 7,000 feet above sea level.
It's suffocating.
The hypoxia alone, the lack of oxygen saturation in the blood, drains the legs in a way that takes weeks, not days, to fully recover from.
The physiological data on altitude recovery is really clear on that point. Your red blood cell count tries to compensate, but the muscular fatigue lingers deep in the tissue.
Yeah.
And immediately after surviving Mexico City, they fly out to face Norway in the quarterfinal.
Norway. A team that doesn't just play football. They test your structural integrity. They utilize a hyper-aggressive physical pressing system that pushes an opponent to their absolute physical limit.
Relentless.
Norway's triggers for pressing are relentless. You don't get a second to breathe on the ball. So England survived the altitude. They survived the physical battering of the Norwegian press. They dragged their exhausted, lactic acid-filled bodies to Atlanta. They executed a perfect 5-4-1 defensive game plan. They took the lead, and they held it until the 85th minute.
Which brings us to the core mystery of the evening.
Right. So I have to ask you, what does this actually mean tactically? If you are the England manager and your team executes the defensive block perfectly, I mean, you literally cannot coach a defense against a 91st minute supernatural pass.
You really care.
You can't drop a tactical scheme on a whiteboard that says, okay, in minute 85, Lionel Messi is going to manipulate space in a way that defies physics, so please stand exactly here to intercept a ball you can't see coming.
No, of course not.
So if the collapse isn't born of tactical failure, what exactly happened out there? Was it just the altitude catching up to their legs?
Well, the altitude and the physical exhaustion certainly eroded their reaction times by a fraction of a second, which is all Messi needs. But our sources introduce a fascinating, deeply psychological theory to explain the nature of the collapse.
Oh.
It's entirely unscientific, but in the context of international football, it might be the only theory that fully explains the atmospheric shift in the stadium.
I am always skeptical of unscientific theories when we have hard physiological data like altitude fatigue, but let's hear it. What is the psychological argument?
The argument is this. In those final 10 minutes, England wasn't just playing against 11 exhausted Argentine men on a pitch in Atlanta.
Okay.
They were playing against an incredibly heavy narrative. They were playing against 60 years of ghosts.
60 years of ghosts. I hear the ghost theory, and it sounds incredibly poetic for a broadcast. But isn't that just a convenient narrative we tell ourselves to make sense of a late defensive lapse? Like, tactically, didn't England just gas out because they were chasing shadows after a month of brutal travel?
The physical exhaustion is the primer, yes. But the psychological weight is what turns tired legs into paralyzed legs.
That's nice, yeah.
When you make a mistake against a normal team in the 85th minute, you recover. When you make a mistake against a team that represents 6 decades of generational sporting trauma, the panic compounds.
That makes sense.
To understand why England collapsed the way they did, with that specific look of terror in their eyes, you, the listener, need to travel back in time with us. We have to unpack the deep mythology of this specific rivalry, because the weight of history operates as a very real, tangible pressure on the pitch.
So where does the origin story of this bad blood actually begin? Take us to the baseline.
The baseline is established in 1966, Wembley Stadium in London, a World Cup quarterfinal match.
1966. That is the year England ultimately won the entire tournament on home soil.
It was their crowning achievement. But the quarterfinal match against Argentina planted a toxic seed that has never been uprooted.
What happened?
During that game, the Argentine captain, an imposing figure named Antonio Ratten, was sent off by the German referee. Now, the mechanics of this are crucial. Ratton claimed he merely wanted an interpreter to speak to the referee. The referee claimed Ratton looked at him with the look of a dictator.
Wow.
Regardless of the reality, Ratton was shown the red card, but he refused to leave the pitch.
Wait, he just stayed on the pitch. I can't even imagine the modern equivalent of that. A national team captain refusing to respect a red card and walk off the pitch in a World Cup quarterfinal at Wembley.
It was a 10-minute standoff. The match completely stopped. The stadium was in an uproar. Ratton eventually walked, famously squeezing the corner flag, which bore the Union Jack, as he left. The tension was unbelievable. But it was what happened after the final whistle that cemented the permanent hatred. The England manager, Alf Ramsey, famously prevented his players from swapping shirts with the Argentines, and in the post-match press conference, he referred to the Argentine players as animals.
Yo, calling your international opponents animals in the global press, that is a quote that burns itself into the cultural memory. That does not fade away.
No, it doesn't. It landed as a profound, unforgivable insult. To the English press, it was a comment on Argentina's physical, cynical style of play. But to the Argentines, it was an attack on their humanity, their dignity, and their nation.
Yeah, that's heavy.
That specific word, animals, became the seed. It established a baseline of deep, visceral, cultural animosity. Every time they played after that, they weren't just playing a football match, they were fighting for their dignity.
So that establishes the baseline in 1966, and then the timeline jumps forward exactly 20 years to the match that literally everyone on the planet knows, 1986.
1986. The World Cup quarterfinal in the blistering heat of the Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. And before we even discuss the football, we have to acknowledge the immense, suffocating context sitting beneath the grass of that stadium.
Right.
This was the very first time these two nations were meeting on a football pitch since the 1982 Falklands War.
Just 4 years prior. The wounds weren't just fresh, they were still actively bleeding.
Exactly. And as we dive into this, it is crucial to note that our mission here is not to dissect the geopolitics or the morality of that military conflict. We are strictly looking at the human element reported in our historical sources.
Of course, we're just conveying what the archives tell us.
Right. And the reality is that this was not perceived as just a game. There were actual living soldiers who had fought in that war watching the match. There was raw, agonizing grief for lost sons and brothers sitting in the stands in Mexico and in the living rooms across both nations.
It's hard to even comprehend that.
The human element was almost too heavy to articulate. The match was played entirely in the shadow of a very real, very recent war.
It's an impossible amount of weight for a sporting event to bear. You have 22 guys in shorts, basically expected to somehow resolve or at least represent the complex grief of two nations. But then, inside that impossible pressure cooker, you get Diego Maradona doing well, executing the most infamous sequence in the history of sports.
He creates a 4-minute sequence of play that completely defines the history of football and perfectly encapsulates the duality of the rivalry.
The duality is staggering. Let's break down the mechanics of what actually happened. In the 51st minute, a ball is hooked high into the penalty area. Maradona, who is maybe 5'5", jumps up to challenge the English goalkeeper, Peter Shilton, who is well over 6 feet tall and has the advantage of using his hands.
Right.
By all laws of physics, Shilton catches the ball. But Maradona uses the biomechanics of his jump to disguise a punch. He literally punches the ball into the net with his left fist. The referee completely misses the infringement, and the goal is given. It is the hand of God. It is pure, unadulterated theft. It is cheating, executed on the grandest stage imaginable. And the English players are physically chasing the referee. The fans are furious. The entire world is in shock at the sheer audacity of the robbery.
The sense of injustice in that moment is absolute. It is a violation of the rules of the game. And yet, before that fear can even settle, before the English players can even catch their breath to process the anger.
Exactly 4 minutes later, he gets the ball again, deep in his own half. And he proceeds to dribble past nearly the entire English team. He beats Peter Beardsley, he spins past Peter Reid, he leaves Terry Butcher in the dust, he bypasses Terry Fenwick, he rounds Peter Shilton, and he slots the ball into the empty net.
Unbelievable.
It requires a center of gravity, a manipulation of momentum, and a technical genius that defies explanation. It is universally recognized as the goal of the century.
The contrast is what makes it immortal. In 4 minutes, you have the deepest, most cynical deception, followed immediately by the highest form of sporting art.
It's as if this incredibly toxic, historically heavy rivalry demanded a symbol to represent its true nature, and the universe just obliged. It provided the ultimate distillation of the conflict, A masterclass in both magic and robbery, delivered by the same man in the exact same breath. How does a national team ever culturally recover from a ghost like that?
They don't. That ghost haunts the tactical preparations and the psychological state of every English player from that moment forward. Which brings us to the next chapter in the sources, 1998, the round of 16 in Saint-Étienne, France.
Ah, the David Beckham red card.
Yes, the match is incredibly tense, locked at 2-2. David Beckham is young. He is the absolute golden boy of English football, the media darling. He is fouled hard from behind by the Argentine midfielder Diego Simeone.
Okay.
Now, Simeone is a master of the dark arts of football, the psychological manipulation of the opponent. As Beckham is lying face down on the grass, frustrated and hurt, he lazily kicks his leg backward, clipping Simeone. It is a petulant, silly little kick. It wouldn't have hurt a child.
But Simeone knows exactly what to do. He collapses like he's been shot, right in front of the referee.
He weaponizes Beckham's frustration. The referee produces a straight red card. Beckham is sent off. England is forced to play with 10 men for over an hour. They fight valiantly, they exhaust themselves, but eventually the game goes to penalties and England loses. Again.
Yeah. And the fallout back in England. When you read the primary sources from the media at the time, it sounds like an excerpt from a dystopian novel.
Right.
The English fans and the tabloid press blamed Beckham entirely.
Oh, absolutely.
They didn't just criticize his performance, they attempted to systematically destroy him. The sources recount that fans were literally burning effigies of David Beckham in the streets of London. They were hanging dummies of a 23-year-old footballer from lampposts outside pubs, all over a reactionary kick in a football match.
That reaction, the burning of effigies, the pure venom poured onto a young man, shows you that the anger was never just about a red card or a lost match. It was a psychological overflow. It was about the perceived injustice of 1966. It was about the unpunished theft of 1986. It was the accumulated generational trauma of this specific fixture boiling over. The weight of playing Argentina had become unbearable for the English psyche.
Which brings the timeline right back to tonight, to the sweltering heat of Atlanta. Our sources point out a statistical fact that is incredibly eerie when you consider all this history. Before the referee blew his whistle tonight, the senior men's teams of England and Argentina had not met on a football pitch in 21 years.
21 years of total unbroken silence.
And they had not played a high-stakes knockout tournament match against each other since that night in Saint-Étienne in 1998.
Just pause and think about the human timeline of that. An entire generation of players has been born, learned to walk, gone through academies, and become elite professional footballers in the time between these two matches.
That's crazy.
The players on the pitch tonight were infants or entirely unborn the last time these two nations collided in a knockout game.
But the ghost doesn't care about the passage of time. The ghost doesn't age. When you line up the historical data points, 1966, 1986, 1998, and now 2026, the pattern is brutally clear.
Very clear.
It is almost a law of nature that Argentina walks away from the pitch with the victory and the heartbreak safely tucked in their pocket, leaving England to stare blankly into the abyss of another tactical and emotional failure. It feels inevitable.
So, returning to your earlier question about why England's shape collapsed in the 85th minute tonight, they weren't just defending against the physical presence of Enzo Fernandez and Lionel Messi.
Right.
They were defending against the phantom weight of Diego Maradona's hand. They were defending against Diego Simeone's mocking grin. They were defending against an unwritten narrative that dictates they must inevitably suffer when they wear the white shirt against that specific blue and white jersey.
The cognitive load.
Exactly. The cognitive load of trying to prevent history from repeating itself is what fatigues the mind. And the fatigued mind misses the runner in the 85th minute.
Exhausting, just mapping it out verbally. But I want to shift our focus back to the physical reality of tonight's game. How did this 60-year psychological weight actually manifest in the biomechanics and the tactics on the pitch in Atlanta? Because you can't just have ghosts floating around. You have flesh, bone, and studs colliding at high speeds.
You do. And the physical collision tonight was spectacular. There's an observation in one of our source articles describing the tactical vibe of the match tonight, and it perfectly encapsulates the shift. The writer noted the first half was a street brawl and the second half was ballet with chainsaws.
Ballet with chainsaws. That is a vivid image, but what does it actually mean in terms of how the players were moving?
It captures the gritty, attritional reality of the tactical setup. The game devolved into a chippy, foul-heavy contest within the first 5 minutes. England's strategy was clearly to disrupt Argentina's passing rhythm through physical dominance.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
bodies were hitting the deck constantly. Every time an Argentine player received the ball with his back to goal, an English center back was going straight through the back of his legs. Players were constantly in the referee's face, screaming for tactical yellow cards, demanding red cards. It was an ugly, bruising, cynical game of football designed to fracture the flow of time.
Ugly in the absolute best, most compelling way possible, though.
Yeah.
Because this rivalry, fundamentally, does not know how to execute a quiet game.
No, never.
They cannot just possess the ball, probe the flanks, and politely shake hands at the end. The heavy history between them demands friction. It demands a street brawl just to acknowledge the stake.
It absolutely demands friction. The tactical fouls are a physical manifestation of the historical lack of trust.
But then the chainsaw ballet arrives. The street brawl is happening for 84 minutes. Everyone is covered in sweat and mud, throwing elbows on corner kicks. The lactic acid is burning. And suddenly Messi manipulates the space.
Yep.
He remembers the geometry of the pitch. He steps completely out of the physical brawl, enters his own isolated pocket of space, and delivers two precise, devastating passes that cut right through the exhausted English defensive structure, like a chainsaw through silk.
The juxtaposition is what makes it so lethal. The sheer brute force and chaotic noise of the match, suddenly punctured by a moment of silent, surgical, transcendent skill. England was prepared to fight a war of attrition. They were not prepared to defend a geometric anomaly.
Okay, I need to take a deep breath. Because as wild, physical, and emotionally exhausting as Atlanta was tonight, as heavy as the historical ghosts were, this was only the semifinal.
Yes, the tournament is not over.
The story still has a final act. Which brings us to the part of this deep dive that is going to keep me staring at the ceiling until dawn breaks.
The impending final.
Sunday. We need to clearly set the stage for you, the listener, so you fully grasp the tactical and historical stakes of what is coming. To clarify the schedule, Sunday is the World Cup final, and the matchup is set. It is Argentina versus Spain.
Spain, the reigning, undisputed champions of the world.
Exactly. Spain won the previous World Cup, and now they're attempting to go back-to-back to successfully defend their title, which in the modern era of international football is an exceptionally rare, almost impossible feat.
So rare.
The sheer physical toll of playing maximum games in back-to-back tournaments, the emotional drain, the fact that every single opponent treats you as their cup final, it mathematically almost never happens.
To climb the mountain twice in a row requires a level of tactical consistency and squad depth that borders on the mechanical.
So what we have on our hands for Sunday is a massive, fundamental clash of footballing philosophies. Let's debate the tactical mechanics of this. It is the cold, calculating brain versus the chaotic, beating heart. I know you've been heavily analyzing the tactical notes on Spain from our sources. What is the fundamental argument for how Spain approaches this final?
The tactical argument for Spain, the sensible theory, as one of our sources aptly names it, is fascinating in its clinical, almost sociopathic coldness. The theory is that Spain will simply bore Argentina to death.
Bore them to death.
Yeah.
We are talking about a World Cup final featuring some of the most dynamic attacking talent on Earth. How do you tactically bore a team to death?
By utilizing the core principles of positional play. Think about the fundamental nature of Argentina's superpower in this tournament. Their mechanism for survival is the late chaos-driven transition moment.
Right.
They rely on the game becoming fractured, emotional, stretched out, and structurally disorganized in the final 20 minutes. That is the Mariana Trench environment where the deep-sea creature thrives.
Okay, so they need the game to become messy so they can exploit the gaps between the panicked defenders.
Exactly. But Spain's entire footballing philosophy is dedicated to the absolute eradication of chaos. Spain will establish possession and they will hold the ball.
Oh.
They will utilize intricate passing triangles to maintain numerical superiority in every single zone of the pitch. They will pass it 10 times, 20 times, 50 times before even attempting a forward progression. They do not just possess the ball, they monopolize it to control the tempo. They will force Argentina's players to literally chase shadows for 85 minutes.
So it's not just about creating chances for themselves, it's a defensive mechanism.
It is the ultimate defensive mechanism. It is defense through possession.
Yeah.
The logic is mathematically unassailable. You cannot possibly execute a late chaos-driven comeback if you physically never touch the ball.
Right.
Spain is going to act like a tactical boa constrictor. They will achieve dominance via 1,000 little risk-free passes, slowly, methodically suffocating the magic and the emotion out of the game. They will carefully remove all the oxygen from the pitch so the deep-sea creature has absolutely nothing to breathe.
Okay, looking at the data, that makes complete logical sense. The boa constrictor method is physically exhausting to play against. But I am going to push back hard with a counter theory based on the patterns we've discussed tonight. Because I think Spain's beautiful, calm, controlling possession football is actually a massive tactical illusion.
An illusion. How can holding 70% possession be an illusion of control?
It's an illusion of safety. Spain will hold the ball for 88 minutes. They will pass it around the back. They will pivot through the midfield. It will look aesthetically beautiful. And the data analysts will praise their 75% possession and their 92% pass completion rate. It will feel totally, completely, statistically under control.
Which is their exact goal.
Right, but only until the 88th minute when the illusion violently shatters. Because here is the fatal flaw in the Spanish blueprint. They are playing against a team that has proven they do not care about possession metrics. And more importantly, they're playing against Messi. For Messi, the boa constrictor doesn't matter. He doesn't need his team to control the game for 90 minutes. He doesn't even need to touch the ball himself for 80 minutes. He just needs one single microscopic transition moment.
One moment.
One tiny gap in concentration. One split second where a Spanish center back blinks or steps half a yard out of line.
Yeah.
You can have your 1,000 beautiful passes. Messi only requires one.
It is the terrifying inevitability of the singular moment against the comforting security of total systemic control.
Exactly. Spain can build the most beautiful, intricate, mathematically perfect lock on the door to keep the danger out. But Argentina possesses a ghost that has proven it can simply walk right through the wall.
That is a highly compelling counterargument, and it sets up a tactically fascinating final. But looking at our sources, this raises one final important question. It's a deeply melancholy thought introduced by one of the historical analysts, and it's a philosophical twist that I honestly cannot shake as we look toward Sunday.
A melancholy twist. What is it?
It is the concept that every story inherently wants an ending.
I'm not sure I follow. How does that apply to Sunday?
Think about the structural narrative arc of any great story. You have the rising action, the deep conflict, the explosive climax, and then the falling action. The question we have to ask is, did Argentina already experience their perfect climax tonight in Atlanta?
Oh, wow. I see where you're going with this.
Think about the emotional and physiological output of what they just achieved. Beating your absolute oldest, most bitter international rival. Exercising the heavy, toxic ghosts of 1966, 1986, and 1998 all in one night.
Yeah.
And doing it with 2 dramatic strikes in stoppage time in a match that looks structurally, tactically, and mathematically lost. The emotional release of a victory like that is astronomical. It is the ultimate psychological and emotional peak a team can experience.
It's the absolute highest high you can possibly experience on a football pitch without actually lifting the trophy.
Exactly. So the deeply melancholy question we have to consider is this. Did they spend their final miracle one round too early? Did they pour every single ounce of their emotional, physical, and spiritual energy into defeating the ultimate villain of their specific cultural mythology, only to show up to the actual final against Spain running completely, dangerously on empty?
That is genuinely heartbreaking to even consider. The idea that you could fight your way through the game of the century, conquer your greatest historical demon, but in doing so, hollow out your own soul so thoroughly that you have absolutely nothing left in the tank for the actual prize.
We see it happen in sports all the time. The emotional hangover of a historic blood feud rivalry game can leave a team totally flat both physically and psychologically in the subsequent round. The narrative story found its perfect cathartic ending in the semifinal, and the final simply becomes a quiet epilogue where Spain's boa constrictor slowly, ruthlessly sweeps them aside with 1,000 emotionless passes.
You know, it's funny. We have spent this entire deep dive talking. We have extensively analyzed the historical archives. We've mapped out the tactical patterns. We've broken down the biomechanics of late-game fatigue.
Yeah.
We have built these incredibly clever, intricate theories about deep-sea creatures thriving in pressure, the suffocating nature of a tactical boa constrictor, and the heavy burden of generational ghosts.
We have attempted to put a logical framework around something inherently chaotic.
Right. And as we sit here in the quiet staring into the dark, the beautiful, undeniable truth of the sport is that a ball, just a simple physical sphere made of leather and air, is going to bounce a certain way on the grass on Sunday.
Yeah.
It might hit an unpredictable divot in the turf. It might catch a strange gust of wind inside the stadium. It might glance off a defender's shin guard at a weird, geometrically impossible angle. And that one unpredictable physical bounce is going to make every single one of our clever, meticulously researched theories look absolutely foolish.
And that ultimately is exactly why we stay up late watching. We crave the analytical theories, we love the historical context, but we are ultimately devoted to the sheer unpredictability of the physical moment.
We want to be surprised. We want the math to be proven wrong.
Whichever way Sunday goes, whether it is the deeply emotional team that simply refuses to acknowledge death, or the clinical mechanical team that refuses to ever give the ball away, one side is going to walk off that pitch carrying a memory that half the globe will hold on to forever.
Yeah.
They will hoist a gold trophy into the air, yes, but they will also hoist a brand new narrative that will be debated and told for decades to come. That's a heavy, deeply beautiful thing to sit with in the dark tonight.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it leaves me with one last lingering thought as we finally wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
Something for you to quietly mull over as you close your eyes and let the night take over. We've talked so extensively tonight about the ghosts of 1966, 86, and 98 haunting this semifinal. We've analyzed the heavy weight of history pulling down on the English players' shirts in the 85th minute. But it makes you wonder, what if the true lasting legacy of a World Cup isn't the physical trophy at all? The trophy just goes into a glass cabinet in a federation headquarters.
Yeah.
It gets polished once a month. It stays perfectly still.
Right.
What if the true legacy of these tournaments is the brand new ghosts they managed to create along the way? Somewhere in that 91st minute in Atlanta today, when Lautaro Martinez leaped into the humid air, suspended in time, and the English hearts shattered all over again on the grass below him, a brand new ghost was born.
A new ghost.
And 20, maybe 30 years from now, a whole new generation of players, kids who aren't even born yet, who've never heard of Atlanta or Anthony Gordon, are going to step onto a pitch against Argentina, completely unaware of the heavy, invisible history they're about to play against. So we wait for Sunday, and we find out which story the night decides to tell.
Good night.